Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I just have a quick what I read this month for you. We're only halfway through February right now, but let me show you what I just did. See that? Those are all the books I cleaned off of that shelf, and I'm taking them and donating them to my, not donating them, I'm turning them in for credit to my secondhand bookstore. I just uploaded a book haul for you, and then I came in here after reading more about minimalism and just simplifying your life and things like that, and I literally just pulled books that I wanted to read, and these are all the books that I'm like, I want to read other good books again. I love these books, but I don't necessarily want to read them again. They were really good, like this one. It was really good. I really liked it. If I want to read it again, I'll pick it up at the library. And I have it on audiobook. I can listen to it again, which is how I did it in the first place. So I did that, and then I also just literally made a list of all the books that I donated and loved but need to go. So on that note, I'm going to take this in, and I was like, I'm just going to share some of the books that I read this month so that as I'm taking this, I don't have to make a second trip. On top of that, pat myself on back, I have another box of books that I just mailed out to somebody, and another box of books that is on my dryer of children's books that I've been reading and weeding through. So right now I'm in this groove, and I'm just trying to get going. And oh my goodness, this is not easy. This is not easy. But I really just want to keep what's on my shelf, that books that I want to just read again and pick them up. And right now I just have a whole bunch of books that I have never read. And it's just growing, and I need to stop. So that's what we're working on. But let's talk about the books that I did read this month. So first of all, actually the first book I read, I've already given it away, and it was A Cry from Egypt, and I don't remember the author. I got it for our Ancient Story of the World read aloud, and it was about the Israelites, and I didn't even finish it. I got maybe a quarter of the way through, and there was just a lot of inconsistencies with the vocabulary that would have been used during that time. And I was just done. I didn't want to finish it. I didn't want to read it. And I was done. And I just was like, no, I'll just read the Israel Exodus. That book is about the time of Moses, before all the plagues and all that. Then another book that I finished this month was this one. And I think I gave it like 2 stars. It was okay. I didn't like it. I didn't dislike it. It was okay. This one is more about, it starts in the middle of the plagues and how they leave Egypt, and you kind of get the idea that they were a grumbling nation to begin with, and even more grumbling within the desert. Honestly, the story that I really wanted to know most about was this Egyptian girl that ended up going with the Israelites because she wanted to follow their God, and basically how she was treated because she was not a Jew, not an Israelite. And I wanted to know more of her story. Tirzah was like, I can read the biblical account, and there's nothing here that's new for me. I just wanted to know the Egyptian girl and her culture and how it worked, being a part of the Israelite nation. And her story, the Egyptian girl, which is Mia, something like that. Mary. Mary ends up going to this older girl. I think she used to be a midwife. She's a medicine woman now. And it's kind of like a Ruth and Naomi story. Like I said, that's the story that I wanted to read. Tirzah was okay. And I really felt like the author just kept really, like, wanting to make it known that a lot of them had blue eyes. Some of them had red hair. And it was just really weird. It's not like I expect a complete nation of just dark people. But it was interesting how the author just really, it was almost like you have to notice this. So honestly, it was just kind of like, oh, okay, awkward, weird, I don't know. So anyway, this one's just gonna go. It's not, I didn't think it was that great. Okay, going back to biblical. Is this the only other one? Nope, I have another one. A couple more. As I said, I'm literally going through my children's shelves and just trying to read all of these books that I have, and just see if they're ones that I want to keep. I want to take with us when we make our across the country move. And I just dropped a bombshell in the middle of this video, I know, but we're working on it, and I'm trying to downsize, which is not easy. Okay, so this book that I have is Hittite Warrior. This one's by Joan Williamson. I don't know why I couldn't say that. This one is more about, I think, the prophetess Deborah during that time period. And honestly, I really enjoyed this one. So they weren't learned men, they were working men. And so there is that whole culture thing of they look down on the men that learn to read and write. They're like warriors. And so his dad gets killed because he won't pay something, and then he goes to stay with a relative, and on the way he ends up saving a rich man's life. And so like there's all this interweaving. Then there's a Jew that is in this great household, and they're gonna sacrifice this kid to the god. He's considered like the one, and the Jew saves him, and so he gets wrapped up into that, and then he gets taken back to the Israelite Jew family, and basically ends up kind of learning about their God, and then he goes back to being the Hittite. And it honestly, like, there was just so much culture in this with biblical stuff, getting to see how the Lord is working from a different perspective, and I really enjoy stuff like this. So this is one I will be keeping. I really enjoyed how it was written, and more engaging, I think. I could really see us being a little bit more engaged, whereas this one I just wasn't engaged as much. Okay. Alright, and then I have this one. This is Where I Belong by Rebecca Kenney. I have a feeling this is really thin. I have a feeling there is more to this. This is a story about a girl that is captured and sold to Abraham as I don't know if it's a companion to Hagar or if it's a slave to Sarah, but she ends up kind of going under Hagar because she's an Egyptian and Hagar was an Egyptian, so they kind of bond together. This was actually really interesting. I love that it was short because I think it actually held more of a story rather than dragging this out. And so I honestly loved this mainly because I got a different perspective of Hagar, and I really, really appreciated that. I wasn't sure about this, to be honest. I just have a little bit of an issue when you take Bible stories and then create stories for them. It's almost, I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes I feel like they take too much liberty. But creating new characters within a biblical story where they're coming into biblical character, or interacting with biblical characters, they kept to the Bible story, but bringing in the culture and what they would have done, that was really useful and helpful, and I'm not sure why I said useful, but really interesting to me, and I really did like this one. So I will be saving that to keep with our Ancients study. Okay, another one that I read was Detectives and Togas, and to be honest, when I started this, I was not sure. It is told humorously. This is ancient Rome, and honestly, I went back to kind of figure out how they came up with this story, and it actually has to do with a tablet or stone that they found when they unearthed Pompeii, and it's basically Caius as a dumbbell. Like, they unearthed that in a child's scroll, and that's kind of how the story comes about. So there's a lot of culture in here. There is a lot of humor in here, but there's not too much. I was kind of afraid it was going to be too much humorous, that I just didn't feel like we were really going to get anything from it. But it was done really, really well. But the only thing I did have some issues with it, and I have my little sticky notes in here because I will be keeping this for the kids. I can see how this would engage them. Especially for younger years, I would say that this is a good 8 to 12 time period. You know what? Probably more like 8 to 10. At 12, I would want something a little bit more deep for them, for history and stuff. But, okay, so they talk about a kid playing hooky at school. And so I looked at, let me just read exactly what it says. Rufus, of course, was absent, and so was Caius. Publius and Antonius had shown up, and they couldn't figure out why Caius was missing. Perhaps he had not done his homework and was playing hooky for that reason. And then I looked up the origin of the term hooky, playing hooky, and it is a mid-19th century, which, 1800s, it wouldn't have been used during this time. So there is some things in here that do not add up, or are just not in the proper context. Another one I have, I don't know if you could read, but basically they talk about this very rich man and his many millions. Historically accurate, it is not. They wouldn't have used many millions. I was looking this up. The term police is used in here. And again, stuff like this really bugs me. I don't know why. I can glaze over some things that I just miss. That somebody will tell me, oh, that's not actually accurate for this time period. Maybe it has something to do with historical or whatever. But terminology, I will hone in on, which is why that cry from Egypt, it was one of the things that just turned me off. There was so much terminology that I'm like, this wouldn't have been in. And I'm trying to find historically accurate, engaging, living books, and it's not accurate. So the term police is used in here, and in my research, the term police would not have been used in the Roman Empire, which is where they are. The army, rather than the dedicated police organization, provided security, and that is a direct quote that I found in my research. So there are some discrepancies within this, but it was engaging, it was fun, and I would probably, I don't know if I would use this as a history, I don't know. Like, I was thinking I would, but I honestly don't know. I think it would just be fun to have on the shelf for kids to kind of pick up and read, and then using like the Greek heroes and some of those books to read, but those can get heavy. So this is kind of where I am going back and forth with. Okay, so I have one more children's book to share with you, and that is The Corn Grows Ripe. This is a Newbery Honor book by Dorothy Rhodes. I'll be honest, when I started this and it starts out with Mayan gods and things like that, I thought it was going to be really heavily saturated in here, and I wasn't too sure about keeping it on my shelf. I like culture books, but there comes a point when it's, especially Mayan culture, can be really difficult. I wasn't really sure, but it got better, and the boy, he's 12 years old. He's kind of considered a mama's boy, papa's, they're spoiling him by the grandma. He's got work to do, and he's kind of lazy. He's always sleeping in. You kind of get it from his perspective, but not from the first person perspective, which I really appreciate. And, so I wasn't really sure until there's an accident with his father. And basically at 12 years old, he has to step up and be the man for the family, or they're not going to survive. The thing. So he starts taking over and felling these trees and really showing that he can help the family, which is very admirable. But another interesting culture thing was that if he didn't learn, he would have to pay a fine. The family would be paying a fine for the fact that he is ignorant in scholars, which was fascinating to me. So not only does he work and toil during the day, but later at night you get a different perspective of him working hard and studying hard so that he doesn't fall behind. So that got really interesting, and some of the things that people didn't like, I actually really appreciated, was the art, because it's exactly what I would expect to find within their culture. Some of them call them primitive. I don't know if primitive, but some of the reviews I said they did not like the artwork, but it was actually one of the things that I appreciated. It's not my style, but it's actually one of the things that I really appreciated because it fit the Central America, their type of art. So in the end, I actually really did like it. I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. It's really short, but it packs a punch. I'm not going to be keeping it because I do know that this one is easily accessible, and just, it wasn't a great book. It was just really good to read. I enjoyed it. I can see my kids reading it one day, but I'm not going to keep it on the shelves. Okay, so I have 2 more books to share with you. I kind of talked about both of these actually in my what I read in January. I did finally read this one. This one was really good. I really recommend it. The most hilarious thing I found in this book is that I got the second hand, and it's basically, the whole book is kind of prep work into not having rebellious kids. The only part of this whole book that was underlined, I was just like, if you're only responding to rebellion, then you've lost your kid. It's not just responding rebellion. You've got to know your kid. But anyway, this was really good. I'm actually going to mail this to a friend who's interested in it. So, but anyway, I got it. I read it. I took notes on it. I have some things that I'll carry away from this. Really good, but it's not going to be staying on my shelf. Okay, the next one I have is Abraham's Well by Sharon L. Foster. I will say that this author is really hard. The way she writes is a little difficult. But it was good. It was, like, because of how she writes, it was a little confusing because I couldn't tell if they were free Cherokee blacks or not, but they basically are under what they called Mama Emma and her husband, but she has her mom and dad, which are not Mama Emma, but Mama Emma considers her a daughter, and then basically how the West changed a lot of things, not just for the Cherokee or not just for the Native Americans, but for some of the blacks too that were under Native Americans because they were their slaves, if I am understanding things correctly. And this had to do with the author's great-grandparents. Anyway, it was, like, I really was fascinated about some of the history behind it. But sometimes it was a little difficult to understand what was going on because of the writing style. And I think it's first person. Yes, it is a colored, first person. And so there's, I was really struck by how survival instincts can completely change a person. Anyway, one of the neat things about the girl who grows up is that you get to see kind of the end of the life and how to that day she was still experiencing a lot of the issues from the past. If that makes sense, I'm trying not to give it away. So I think I gave it 3 stars. Yes, there was some circuit writers that kind of went through here that would explain the all-knowing God that worked with their culture and their medicine man and gods and how that came about. And so that was interesting. I think that's why I marked it. But anyway, it's gonna go. It's not one I'll read again, but it was fairly interesting. Okay, so look at that. We're at 20 minutes just sharing those books. Can you imagine what it would have been like at the end of the month? And literally, I am just trying to read as many of these books as I can and get them done out. And I would like to start creating crafts again, and I've kind of been tied to books, which is not where I'm going to go, but what I'm doing right now. I actually forgot one other book that I read this month. John Diamond by Leon Garfield. I'll be honest, this one was a little difficult for me to even know how to review it. Leon Garfield is, I think, well known, popular, especially in, he did the Shakespeare book that a lot of, I think, homeschoolers know about. He's done some other stuff, but I really don't know. John Diamond, I saw this on Amazon one day. I think it was $3. It was like one of those crazy book deals. And I went ahead and got it. And it's part of the vintage classics, so of course it had to be good, right? Half of this book I had no idea what was going on. Not to say that, like, I didn't know the story. I just had no idea what was going on. John or the boy here, William, in the story, basically knows that his father's got a lot of guilt. He's walking across the floor above William's room, and it's got like these chains, and then he basically dies. But just before he dies, he gives a pocket watch to William and then like confesses. William has a evil uncle that comes in and wants to reform the boy, and so William escapes to try to find John Diamond, or Mr. Diamond. I think actually John Diamond's the boy. Albert Diamond? I think it might be Albert Diamond. Let me go back. There's like a list of characters. Alfred Diamond. And basically, William's father swindled Alfred Diamond out of some money, and so he's trying to find him. He's through the streets of London, going and running into a whole slew of characters, and it's really difficult to follow what's going on. You've got shot in the head character, and what I think Leon Garfield was trying to do was create kind of a twisted Dickens mesh. You've got characters that I'm like, oh, you can see Oliver Twist being that, and you've got, oh, I think that's David Copperfield. There's this one character that goes to the streets and he sings, I care for nobody and nobody cares for me. I remember this, and the reason I remember this is because in my mind I was thinking it's the French guy that sings that creepy song from Little Dorrit. So I think that's what Leon Garfield was just doing, was just meshing a bunch of Dickens together. And at the end, what made this book worthwhile was at the end, there's basically a discussion of morality and character and things like that. And I read it out loud to my husband because we were like, this is really good. And that was the only thing about this book that I liked. It's dark, it's through the streets of London, it's kind of creepy. If that's your thing, you will probably love this book. To be honest, I just felt like I was missing so much. Even at the end where you're kind of getting an idea of what's going on, I was like, I don't know, I think I would have preferred to read something else, like Terry Pratchett's Dodger. That was really fun to read. But again, it was a little dark, but I did finish it, and it's gonna go, oh wait, another book I read this month. Leave me a comment if you enjoyed this video down below. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.